morning. This is very nice. I have 6 more weeks of being a dean, and so after that, I don't think rooms will quiet when I stand up anymore. So I'll appreciate this moment as much as I can. So good morning and welcome to Boston University and to the Center for Promise's release of their latest research report, I Came Here to Learn. I'm Hardin Coleman, as I mentioned. I'm Dean of the School of Education. I'm pleased to see so many of you here today. Our school, the School of Education here, is focused on creating equitable access to a high-quality learning experience for all children by developing educational practices that are consistently engaging, preparing students and teachers to enter a world filled with technology and social change, and developing what we call gap-closing scholarship, which is really focused on eliminating the achievement and opportunity gaps between our poor children and our wealthy children. First language, non-English students have unique needs that need unique solutions to creating equitable access for them. As educators, nonprofit practitioners, and policymakers, we have a responsibility to create this equity. Since we brought the Center for Promise to BU nearly 2 years ago, we've enjoyed watching the Center for Promise grow and tackle new research on a variety of topics, from career pathways to adversity to wellness, and appreciate their contributions to both the School of Education and the broader field of applied human development. What ties all this work together is a focus on creating real opportunities for all youth to succeed in school and in life. I've been excited by the Center for Promise placing youth at the center of every inquiry and producing actionable studies. Today's report is no exception. I came here to learn. The Center for Promise gains greater insight into the experiences of students throughout Massachusetts whose first language is not English. The recommendations from the young people guide us as we consider better ways to support them to high school graduation and beyond, creating equitable pathways to educational opportunities. I was struck as I reviewed the report by how many of the comments of what these students were asking for. You can hear educators, you can hear our colleagues saying, oh yeah, we do that. Oh yeah, that makes sense. And it's really clear that we may think we're doing it, but we're not doing it well. And we don't know how to do it as it applied to the needs of our individual students. So this report really sets the stage for us to thinking of raising the bar for expectations in practice. Although I will soon be stepping down as dean and returning to full-time research and teaching, I look forward to continuing our work with the Center of Promise for years to come. So thank you very much for coming.
Dean Coleman is awesome, but he doesn't really leave much to be said, so I will be very brief. I'm John Gompertz. I'm the president and CEO of America's Promise Alliance, which is the other home of the Center for Promise. And I just wanted to welcome everybody here today, to thank Dean Coleman and others at the BU School of Education, which has been such a great partner and such a great home. And he personally has been a great counsel, a great supporter, and a great friend to all of us. I also want to thank and note a bunch of partners who are here in the room this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. And to say a big thank you to all of our colleagues at the Center for Promise who have worked hard on all the reports that Dean Coleman mentioned, and especially today, impertinently, on I Came Here to Learn. So last week, America's Promise and partners released the Building a Grad Nation 2017 report. That's our annual report on progress and challenges to increasing high school graduation rates, with a goal of a 90% on-time high school graduation rate for all young people across all groups. The report shows that we made great progress. We're at now the highest rate of graduation in our history, 83.2%. That's up over a dozen years from about 71%. And the best we can figure, that means about 2.8 million additional students graduated from high school on time over that dozen years because of those increases. And if you just think, what that means in the potential of an individual life and the life of their family and the life of that community, and multiply that by 2.8 million, that's a lot of progress and something that we are really, really pleased with. At the same time, that report pointed out that there are continuing enormous gaps in graduation rates for a bunch of subgroups: low-income young people, kids of color, students with disabilities, and English language learners. And those gaps they're wrong. We have to deal with that. Those gaps have closed, by the way, over the years, over the 12 years of this effort, but they remain large. And we will not get to 90% graduation rate if we don't close those gaps. So we need a breakthrough. I said at the Building Grad Nation report launched last week that I think it's possible to think that we've gotten the easier wins, that what's left are harder cases and harder wins. And to pretend otherwise, I think we're fooling ourselves, but we're also, we're not ultimately the ones who will suffer. The ones who will suffer are young people and their families and communities who don't graduate and who don't move towards adult success. So for us, this is a very, very serious matter. As I mentioned, one of the subgroups that is that still has a big disparity is English language learners, or first language not English, as people are called here in Massachusetts. And so if we're going to really make progress for all these subgroups, we need to understand much better what's going on for those young people. It's clear that just the ordinary response, even the ordinary response dialed up a little bit, is not adequate. So we need to understand what the challenge is and what the opportunities for action are. And that is what this report, I Came Here to Learn, is all about. In our Grad Nation campaign, we have many partners, but one of our most special partners is Pearson. And my last duty here today is, and pleasure, is to introduce our friend and partner, Stacey Skelly, who's the vice president at Pearson, to talk about their commitment and to begin to introduce this report. Pearson has been with us for several years now as we look at the locus of action around what needs to happen to raise graduation rates is more and more states and local communities, right? And the reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which is called ESSA, was very explicit about that. And this new administration is very explicit about it. This is a responsibility that lives at the state level and gets played out at the local level. So Pearson came to us even before that act was passed and said, we want to help you focus on state level action. And our friends who are here today from the Massachusetts Department of Education are one of the key partners in doing that, and Pearson has helped us spearhead this work at the state level, including this report. So it is my pleasure to bring up Stacey Skelly from Pearson. Thanks, Stacey.
Well, thanks, John. That certainly feels like a heck of an introduction. So I will keep it short because I don't want to dissuade from anything that he said. But a giant thank you for all of you being here today. And my colleague, actually, JC Constantine, with me as well. He is a local Bostonian and has some real expertise, having spent 10 years in the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So a few words from us, simply to say that in education, we like to talk about scale. We're always saying, how can we take the good things and scale them? How can we do better? And note what's best practice and make it available to other people. So our effort in being a part of the America's Promise Alliance and our partnership here is talking about how we can help states scale what works. In doing so, we provided 3 grants, one of which is with our friends at the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, to focus on what state-level action looks like. And so we're here. Obviously, graduation is a first step in a pathway to a successful career and a better life, and all of us want that for our students. As John mentioned, students of color, those with disabilities, those in low income especially need our help, which is why we're so proud to be here today to support those youth, and we're going to hear from them directly in just a minute. A final word just to say that this is a starting point. This is not the end. We have an online learner community that our America's Promise partners help us run. They produce webinars. We have more research to come. Minnesota is going to work with us, as well as Arizona. So if you'd like to join that learning community, I'd encourage you to do that because this is a way that we can actually help each other learn about what works. And just a note to our colleagues at the department, thank you for hard work. I think it actually takes a lot of bravery to stand up and say, we have one of the highest graduation rates in the whole of the nation, and we're not there yet. Our first language, not English students are only graduating at 70%, and that's not good enough. So they've opened themselves up, providing data, and working with 10 of their districts to make this happen. And so just a huge thank you to that team for the hard work that they've done. JC, a few words from you about your experiences here, if you don't mind, and then I'll start the video.
Thanks, Stacy. Good morning, everyone. Today's Center for Promise report provides both fresh data on the challenges and achievements of FLNE students and gives us an opportunity to offer insightful comments and lessons from the students themselves. And as we heard from Dean Coleman, John, and we'll hear throughout the day, this is important that we do a better job of identifying and learning from these examples of where success is happening. As we'll hear in the research presentation, I read with interest the identification of the different categories of FLNE students, particularly the high-performing ELL students. And I want to know more about the differentiated instruction that those students are receiving, what kinds of non-academic supports they're receiving, and what are the practices that are leading to the higher outcomes that we're seeing. You know, Pearson, we were very fortunate back in April 2016 to visit a local school, the Boston International Newcomers Academy, with our CEO, John Fallon. And I know that the school's principal, Tony King, is here today. And if you haven't met him, I hope you get a chance to meet him and some of his wonderful students. He summarized in that visit something that I thought was very provocative and is very important. Tony said, we've created a culture here, a climate where students feel safe and comfortable. And it's a culture that the students and teachers themselves have created. And we have so much to learn from these students and educators in order to better inform our own practices and planning. And I think you'll hear some of that from the video that we're about to see. Thank you.
All right, enough from us adults, right? Let's hear from the students themselves.
Aprender inglés no es fácil. Yo todavía no hablo perfecto inglés, pero lo he intentado y lo intento diariamente.
Yo no hablaba ni una palabra en inglés, ni siquiera la palabra hola podía decir.
Yo siempre tuve una meta que yo podía hacerlo y logré aprender inglés.
Mi nombre es Iván, originalmente de El Salvador, tengo 19 años. Mi papá se mudó hacia los Estados Unidos cuando yo tenía 7 años. Él nos decía que era un país libre donde no se tenía que preocupar por la falta de oportunidades. El primer día en mi escuela yo pensaba que esa escuela no iba a ser para mí porque mi profesora hablaba inglés pero no hablaba español y eso fue difícil para mí porque no entendía nada, pero ella siempre buscaba la manera de ayudarme.
Mi nombre es Leslie, yo vengo de la República Dominicana y tengo 18 años de edad. Sociedad Latina es un programa que ayuda a la juventud y aquí yo puedo desarrollarme más haciendo lo que me gusta, que es el canto. My mom doesn't know any English at all, so every time I go to her to an appointment or to the store or any place, I have to translate for her.
Me llamo Erika, soy de Ecuador y tengo 17 años. Cuando recién vine yo no sabía nada, yo estaba perdida. I met Hilda like a year ago. She's my mentor. She helped me getting involved in my community because I love helping people.
When I hear negative things that people say about immigrants, it made me feel sad and angry at the same time. Because they don't know how hard it is for us, the immigrants, to learn the language. They have no idea what sacrifice we have made to be where we are right now.
A lot of us come here for the American dream. We come here to work hard and to have a better future.
Cuando se ponen a hablar así de eso, yo digo que para mí soy latina y estoy aquí para superarme. In the school you go to learn, do homework, tests. Here you participate, interact with other people. Coming here, I practice my English. I speak more. I have like the opportunity of learning new words.
I've developed a good relationship with all my classmates here. Right now we're working in Spanish songs, specifically Selena's. I know the songs because that's my favorite artist. The vocalists that I'm working with, they don't really know the Spanish language. So I help them pronounce the word, helping them sing it.
Mi primera maestra de inglés que tuve, ella tuvo un contacto con la Universidad de Harvard en un programa que se llama Rise Up. Y ese programa es específicamente para estudiantes que son inmigrantes y que están aprendiendo inglés. Yo escribí mi ensayo, yo le puse mucha pasión y me aceptaron. They were so happy to have me there. And I will be working with them during the summer in the neurology department. Imagínense si no hubiera sabido inglés, nunca hubiera tenido lo que tengo ahora. Entonces, inglés es súper importante y eso es una gran transformación.
Lo que nosotros estamos planeando para el Youth Summer es hacer una conferencia para dar oportunidades a otros jóvenes que no lo han tenido.
Next year in my school, I enter a program that is interpreter in the medical field. To me, it's important to help other people because I know what it feels to not know anything.
You got a lot of opportunities and they are waiting for you ahead if you be a bilingual person.
It's just wonderful to hear from the young people. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming today. My name is Shannon Varga, and I am a postdoctoral research fellow at the Center for Promise. I was the lead researcher on this report, and I am very excited to be presenting a very broad overview of some of the findings from the report. I came here to learn achievements and experiences of Massachusetts students whose first language is not English. The term first language not English includes English language learners, who we simply call English learners. It also includes former English learners, so youth who might have been reclassified from English learners, and youth who were never English learners. Youth whose first language is not English represent the fastest growing public school aged population in the United States. In particular for Massachusetts, 1 in 5 students have identified a first language other than English. In general, Massachusetts students have one of the highest four-year graduation rates in the country at 88%. However, based on data from the most recent cohort of students that we used in this study, students whose first language is not English are graduating at just above 70%. When you break down the first language not English population into students who are currently ELs, they have a graduation rate of 56%, and other FLNE students have a graduation rate of about 77%. America's Promise Alliance, Pearson, and the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education embarked on this project in order to better understand how to support this ever-growing population of students through graduation. Over the past year, in particular, the center has utilized multiple methods in order to understand the various factors that support or hinder academic persistence for first language non-English students. In our first approach, we broadly wanted to be able to determine if groups of students exist based on a variety of factors rather than a single factor using latent class analysis. We use statewide data of a ninth grade cohort of students from the 2010-2011 academic school year so that we would have their 4- and 5-year graduation rates. We also wanted to understand from the youth perspective what factors might they believe support or hinder their academic persistence. So we then conducted focus groups or in-depth group interviews in 5 school districts to ask Latinx young people what might contribute to or deter them from leaving school. After analyzing data from over 13,000 students, 6 unique classes of students were identified based on 8 indicators. You can find more information about these particular categories on page 34 of the full report. Here are just a few highlights from the report that I will be discussing today. First, English learner does not equal low performing. Some FLNE students are achieving academic success. Not all Spanish speakers are the same. And 2 groups of students clearly need more support. So first, English learner does not equal low performing. Class 3 in the report represents a class that is running counter to the narrative of English learner performance, not just in the state, but across the country. There is a 100% probability that they are currently enrolled in an EL program or have been enrolled in the past 2 years. So we're comfortable saying that these are English learners. Most of them, they have a high probability of passing all their 9th grade courses and are likely achieving proficiency or better on their math MCAS. With a 4-year graduation rate of 70%, they are graduating at higher rates than the state average for English learners. This class demonstrates the need to have a more nuanced discussion about ELs. Moreover, some FLNE students are achieving academic success. Class 2 in the report represents FLNE students who are excelling. So here we have a very low likelihood that they have been enrolled anytime recently in an EL program, although they might have been at some point. They're likely passing all of their 9th grade courses and achieving proficiency or higher on both state assessments. With a 4-year graduation rate of 92%, they're graduating at higher rates than even their native English-speaking peers. This just points to the variation within the FLNE population and why we need these techniques to better understand who needs support and who might not. Not all Spanish speakers are the same. Spanish is the most common reported native language other than English in Massachusetts and in most states in the country. In our analysis, Spanish is the predominant language reported for classes 4, 5, and 6. However, these students vary in terms of their participation in EL programs, their time in the state, and they vary widely in their performance. This points to the variation within a single language group and the need to consider multiple factors when examining student performance, not simply just language or one marker of performance. Further, when you look at their graduation rates, there are large gaps. So class 4, with a graduation rate of 79%, is actually approaching the state average, whereas classes 5 and 6, with graduation rates of 44 and 53%, represent the area of greatest opportunity to increase graduation rates. Overall, techniques such as latent class analysis can provide insight to more targeted support for students. Moving to the in-depth portion of the report, we conducted group interviews in 5 cities across Massachusetts to ask young people what factors they felt helped or hindered their academic persistence. They mentioned motivation, language, competing priorities, family support and separation, and school climate as important factors in their academic persistence. In terms of motivation, every single young person we spoke with expressed a deep motivation to learn English and a desire to persist academically so that they could become someone, so that they could provide for themselves, so that they could provide for their families, and ultimately contribute to society. Youth expressed an understanding that language was the bridge to educational attainment. It was also the bridge to careers and ultimately their success in this country. However, when we spoke to the students, they also expressed that language could sometimes be a barrier to connection and support. For example, we heard several stories of young people who felt they were given detention because they lacked the language proficiency to explain themselves for why they were maybe a minute late. They also felt that early poor treatment because of their language proficiency made them reluctant to reach out to adults later on for support, because they felt that they would either continue to be treated poorly or they would not be heard at all. And so in this way, language can act as a barrier to educational persistence long after young people reach proficiency. Competing priorities was the most common theme that came up across the group interviews. Students often described having to balance working full-time, supporting family members, and going to school. Many times, students described having to choose earning enough money to pay for food or housing over education. Sometimes this meant that they left school altogether, but other times it just meant that they worked until midnight, did homework until 1:30, and got up at 5:30 to get on the bus to go to school, which led to them coming to school completely exhausted. When this happened, we found that it created tension between students and teachers because the students often felt that teachers misinterpreted their tiredness as disinterest in learning or apathy. And coupled with sort of the language barriers from earlier, the young people did not feel that they could express to the teacher. They just were balancing too many competing priorities. The students we spoke with mentioned that family was an immense source of emotional support and encouragement for them to learn English and graduate high school. However, family separation, either through the immigration process or families working long hours in opposite of each other, left to young people not having families' physical involvement in their education. So many youth were without this key support of familial involvement, which we all know is very important for their school persistence. Youth often provided examples of when they experienced disconnection or discrimination in interactions with peers, adults, and school policies, which led to them feeling a negative school climate. For example, many young people felt that they were punished unfairly relative to their native English-speaking peers if there was a conflict between them, because again, they lacked the proficiency to explain their innocence, but also they felt that they weren't being heard when they tried. Youth described how on top of all of the other barriers to school persistence they were facing, a climate like this was quite discouraging. On the other hand, youth also described how social support and encouragement from school staff and personnel were key in mitigating the effects of this discrimination and disconnection that they felt. On an even more extreme level, some youth described a school climate where there was this feeling of community, belonging, authentic care, high expectations of them, and respect for their multiple cultural identities. We would call such a climate a trans-caring school climate. And as you can see in these quotes, interactions with school personnel were a key part of creating such a climate. One small example would be that some staff created assignments where students could highlight their personal history and culture. Most students who felt such a trans-caring climate highlighted it in their reasons for school persistence. We asked young people what suggestions they had for improving academic experiences for other students whose first language was not English. There's more of a discussion about these implications in the report, but for now, I'll just leave you with the headlines. Create more opportunities for connection between peers and adults. Engage young people in the design of educational programs that serve first language non-English students. Provide more comprehensive student supports. Support the student by supporting the family. Provide more programs, flexible programs for older youth, and continue to increase opportunities for teacher training and sharing of promising practices. Ultimately, this report and all of the work from the Center for Promise brings young people and their voices to the center of this conversation. We do this with the hopes that it encourages productive dialogue and developmentally appropriate practices and policies to help youth reach their full potential. Thank you. Thank you all for your attention. I'm now very pleased to welcome all of the members of the panel and our moderator.
Good morning. I'm John Zapp. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Promise. And while the panel is making their way up, I've been instructed by our amazing social media team that if you happen to be a Twitter-like kind of person, that you should use the hashtag Grad Nation as you're tweeting about the event. I'm not a Twitter-like person, so I don't know what that really means. At the Center for Promise, as Shannon mentioned, we are really sort of almost evangelists about making sure that we can understand the true lived experience of young people, and so that we can create the conditions so that all young people have a true opportunity to succeed in school and life. So you've just heard about the study that we've done. Now I'm incredibly excited to hear from experts about, now what do we do with this? And this amazing panel comes to us with a variety of backgrounds. You may recognize our first panelist from his starring role in our video, with Yvonne. So thank you, Yvonne, for coming. I know this is in the middle of the school day, so we appreciate you taking time to be with us. Thank you. Next to Yvonne is Lori Silva, who comes to us from Brockton Public Schools, where she helps to coordinate a variety of services within schools and with community partners, and to ensure that there are multiple pathways for all young people to succeed. Next to Lori is Mary Jo Marion, who's the Executive Director of the Latino Education Institute, which was also featured in our documentary. And again, you can read more about the wonderful work that LEI does really every day in Worcester to really help uplift all young people whose first language is not English, and specifically among Spanish speakers. So welcome, Mary Jo. And finally, but definitely not least, is Evangelia Diamantopoulos, who comes to us from the Framingham Public Schools, where she was also named last year as the Matsal 2016 Teacher of the Year, for her just phenomenal work. And I just have to mention this one piece that is in her bio, because I think it really exemplifies, I think, what we all believe about this population, which is she works to raise student achievement by celebrating the strengths and meeting the students' academic needs. So it really is recognizing that all these young people come with amazing strengths, but that we have to meet the needs that we know they all have. So, thank you all for. So my hope is that this is more of a discussion. I'm also going to open it up in probably not too long to audience questions, because we want this to be a full audience participation kind of event. We didn't put that in the invitation because we know people get scared when they're like, I'm going to have to talk. But we would love your questions, so please don't be shy. But I want to just start with a broad question for everybody. And I'll start with Yvonne with this, which is, when you think about students who've immigrated, and it was said so eloquently by one of your peers in the documentary, which is to really pursue your American dream. Right. So the question becomes, what is really needed for you when you came here? What did you need to be? How were you supported to help you achieve your American dream?
Well, that's an interesting question. I would say the opportunities that a student can get when it's the first day of school, or when it's like the first time for immigrants as us to be in an American high school, an American school, we feel like, oh, this is another world, because it is a huge difference to be in an American high school than other high schools around the world. And I will say that sometimes students feel that they don't feel connected with, they feel shy at the beginning, and sometimes they don't help them in order to develop their activities and to develop their skill of speaking skills, communication skills, because sometimes students feel like nervous, or sometimes they feel fear that they want to communicate with them, but the huge barrier of learning English, or the huge barrier of the language, is the huge obstacle that denies them to succeed in high school. And that would be the problem. That is the problem that I would say I had in the beginning when I just got into the high school, because my teacher, she just spoke Arabic and Somali and English, but not Spanish. I was kind of lost in the beginning. But then but then there were another program. There was a lot of programs in my high school where they helped me to develop my how to learn English. And I think if we provide more programs like that, programs that support English language learner, that would be helpful for them, and would say for us, because that in that way we're gonna learn more faster and we're gonna develop a successful future.
Thank you. Evangelia, if you could build on that a little bit, just to experience in the classroom, working with families that have a lot of the same experiences that Yvonne had, and how what are your reflections on how to best support them toward their dreams?
So similar to what Yvonne just said, I think the first thing is to create a safe and welcoming environment for our students. As simply as if you have a student in your class who doesn't speak the same language you do, for instance, make an effort to learn how to pronounce a student's name correctly. The name Evangelia Diamantopoulos, it can be a challenge for some people to learn to pronounce, but I did have teachers who made an effort. I think that makes a huge difference because they want you there. Also, get to know your students' interests, their experiences, and with the language, if you can learn a few words with your students' language and use them in the classroom to show them how much you value what they bring to the classroom and their strengths. And they just mentor your students, be there available for them. Be a responsible adult that they know they can count on.
That's great. And Lori, when you think about this, then from a district level, but also from recognize that I know that you deal a lot with what happens outside of the classroom very often. What are the kinds of things that you've seen through Brockton that have been helpful in supporting students?
A big part of what we do in Brockton is we're very supportive of all student populations, and some of the programs or protocols that we've instituted in the district have been very helpful. One of them being that all of our schools are trained to be trauma-sensitive schools, so there's been a great deal of professional development and program enhancements that have occurred. And with that professional development, it occurs across all levels, so it's not only the instructional staff, but it's also the custodians, it's the people who are the cafeteria workers. So everybody is trained in that to have a very supportive and caring atmosphere in the school for the students. Paralleling that, we also have PBIS, which is the Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports Program, which is implemented across just about all the schools in the district. And again, that's a very supportive way of fostering youth growth and development, and also in fostering that culture of acceptance and positiveness. We also have what's very helpful in the district, specifically for our FLNE, student populations, is we have a great deal of bilingual adjustment counselors, as well as bilingual guidance counselors, and that makes a huge difference for our youth in not only learning the language, but in also being feelings of accepted and valued in the district.
Thank you. And Mary Jo, thinking about the work of LEI and the work you've led for so many years in Worcester, what are your reflections on what a district or a city can do and individual programs can do to support students?
I think it's really key because the work that we do is with the schools. We service 18 schools in Worcester, 3 in Springfield, and most of our work is done at Worcester State. And that is an important piece because we need to be able to help EL students in ways that don't feel or look like school. So we need to be able to provide the enrichment kinds of opportunities that they cannot get in a normal school day. And why can't they get that? Because time on task. They're learning English at the same time as they're learning their academic work. Because of that, they're limited in terms of the enrichment opportunities they can take in high schools or middle schools. So what we want to do as Worcester is bring in all of the resources that we can to make sure that students have the opportunities that other students have. And that's an important way that we as an urban area can wrap around and help these students.
Thank you. Yvonne, I saw you shaking your head very knowingly. Do you want to talk some about your own experiences, the kinds of supports that you received, not just inside the classroom, but outside the classroom?
Yeah, absolutely. I think her idea was amazing idea, and her explanation was good. To say that the environment in the classroom, and not only in the classroom, but in the whole school, should be an environment where newcomer students feel that they are part of the society, that they, just because they do know English, we're gonna segregate them. That sometimes a student feels that way, but in my own experience, I felt that basically my teacher, although she didn't speak Spanish, but she was so supportive with me. She was like trying to going online and going to Google Translate to say, oh, this is what I want you to do, and this is gonna be the homework. And so she was engaging me in that way. She was so supportive, and not only my teacher, but the principal, my principal, Mr. King, that he is here today. He is always looking forward for the better of the school. He's always looking for programs that help a student, an English language learner, and in one of those programs was the one that I talked about in the video. That was this program that's called Rise Up in Harvard University. That was an amazing program, and I guess that was the beginning of me developing the English language, because it helped me so much. And I think if we provide those opportunities and more opportunities like that to the student, we're gonna have a successful outcome if we do that. Also, if somehow we could like reduce the number of students learning in a classroom, that would be helping a lot, because sometimes I want to talk kind of plural. It might be in the whole schools of Massachusetts that there's like 26 or 25 students, and some of them, they are learning English, right? But sometimes not everybody understands the same thing, right? And so it would be so helpful if we kind of reduce the number of students who are in the classroom so they can learn more, and they can learn more quickly. That would be awesome.
That's great. And I think to a lot of the points you raised about what the amazing teachers and faculty and administrators at BINCA are doing to support you. I'm wondering, Evangelina, from your perspective, you're in a school in Framingham, in a district that has a pretty large number of ELL and broader FLNE youth, but not in a school that's specifically dedicated to that population. And so being in a school of education and being a lot of people in the audience who are, current or aspiring teachers and counselors, they're probably thinking, that all sounds great, but what can I possibly do in my school to make this happen? What would you say?
So I am from a district where there's over 70 languages represented in the district, but in my specific school, 84% of the students, their first language is not English, FNLE students, and over 50% receive ESL instruction. So we have a transitional bilingual program in the school, and we offer world language, Portuguese world language. So I feel like in my school we're very supportive. We have staff that speaks Portuguese, which is the majority of our students speak. We have staff that speak Spanish, which is the second largest language that's spoken. And for students who do not speak either one of those languages, we have native language tutors that come in and help us with the students with the transition process. We also have a guidance staff that speaks the students' language, and I'm part of the parent engagement committee, which we organize monthly meetings for parents that parents have asked for. So we don't just go off and just organize meetings that we think parents need. We survey the parents, we ask them what they would like to have more information on, and we organize the meetings for them, and they like them on Friday nights. So at least one Friday night a month, but it's been 2 Friday nights since December that we've been having meetings for parents and for the students about topics that they're interested in, such as, the U.S. school system structure. What are parent expectations in the United States schools? Questions that they have about homework. Parents are interested in knowing more about going to college, and how can they, get themselves on the road to college. So, things like internet safety, pretty much, you name it, we probably had a workshop on it. So I think I'm from a district that's very supportive. I come from a school that, this is our population. The majority of the students' first language is not English. And having been a student who grew up in Framingham, whose first language was not English, I understand the importance of having those supports in place.
Thank you for that, because as you say, it speaks to creating an entire school culture that's supportive instead of being kind of isolated in in a couple of rooms in a school building and trying to still sort of navigate your way through how do you create a school-wide culture. I would love to have you reflect, Mary Jo, and then Lori after, knowing, Mary Jo, that you have a lot of programs that focus on families, and talk about the ways you see the parents and see how they're an essential part of this equation.
I think that the research showed that I think that the research showed that the students identified that their homes were a large source of where they got the love and help that they needed. But more importantly than that, or as key, is that we don't think you can take a child in isolation and educate them or enrich them, particularly FLNE students who come from a smaller ecosystem, meaning that it's their church, their family, and maybe parts of their neighborhood. So if you really want to reach down and have a deep long-term effect on students, you need to engage with families, and you need to make the families a partner in the work that you do. All too often, this does not happen in schools, where they wait for parents to come to the schools to meet for school nights or for particular items. The #1 call that we get at the LEI from schools in Worcester is, we need help. We can't engage our Latino parents or other sets of immigrants. And so before we work with a school on that, we want to make sure that we're on the same page as to what family engagement means. It doesn't mean that the LEI helps to gather them and then you use that opportunity to stand on a stage and tell the parents what they need to be doing. That's not engagement. Engagement is learning from each other and being in an equal place. So the work that we do with families is helping them get to the place where they can engage and initiate contact with schools. And without that, we really feel that we're not going to be able to move this needle. And that takes a real change in how schools engage with families and an understanding of the assets that family brings. I was struck by what one of the students said on the film when she said, "I know what it's like not to know anything." Do you think that young lady ever not knew anything? Of course not. Do you think that her family ever not knew anything? No. Could it be that because of a lack of understanding, that's the perception that they grew to understand of where they were at? And unless we begin to recognize the assets that students have and that families have, we're not going to be able to advance this work. And so one of the things that I was struck with after reading the report is the importance of the asset piece. And it's not just the assets that the students bring, it's the assets that the family brings and that the neighborhoods bring. And that's a really important piece to our work, and we need to expand that lens.
At the district level, parent and community engagement is a key priority, and it's embedded in the district's strategic plan. And with that in mind, there has been a great deal of movement for bringing the community and families into the schools and the schools into the community. We do have a family engagement specialist who creates a myriad of parent activities and parent academy offerings. This past year, she had it was almost 100 different workshops and activities that she did, some of them parent and child, some of them specifically for the adults alone. And last year, she had just about 3,000 people, parents attend. So she really has cast a wide net. As part of that district strategic plan as well, we've really begun offering parent engagement events that are conducted in Cape Verde, Portuguese, Haitian French, and Spanish. And we've had a wide variety of topics so that are very pertinent to our families. They've been conducted on cyberbullying, understanding school discipline. We've done Spanish Heritage Nights. So there's been a variety of activities that have been done specifically in the languages of the families that we represent. We also have, which is extremely helpful for that in parent engagement and that level of trust and comfort with the school, we have 9 bilingual community facilitators, Cape Verdean, Haitian, Portuguese, French, Spanish, Hmong, and Chinese speakers. And they are very active in reaching out and talking with our families and building those relationships and building that trust. And it's also not uncommon for them to do a home visit and help a family with something that's not just necessarily affecting their child in school, but affecting the family at large. So they're very empowered to help our families. We do have 3 ELL immigrant parent advocates. And they really do have a wide variety of services that they'll offer, a lot of referrals, a lot of advocacy work for them. And they'll actually work flexible hours so that they're housed in our Adult Learning Center, which is primarily for our adult English language learners. And they'll hold evening hours so that they're open till 9 o'clock at night. So for the parents who work during the day, they can still access their services during the evening hours. They also staff during the day so that the parents that work in the evenings can also access their services. And then we also have a huge bilingual PAC that meets regularly. And they're a very active group in advocating for the needs of their children, their families, and the community.
Stand to my right. I will say we have a couple of microphones, and so if you do have a question, you can feel free to make your way to a microphone, and we'd love to hear your voice as well. While you're getting the courage to do that, I'm going to ask another question though, which is, all of you have talked about when things go right. When you feel supported, when you are providing the supports as you think they should be. I think we all know that perfect is never a possibility, that things do go wrong. Can you reflect on a time when you learned from an experience, you said that wasn't it, either because you weren't being supported and you thought that needs to be changed, or because the way you were going about supporting students, you realized in the end we needed to change that?
For what other things that code switch. One of the things that we've learned throughout the years at the LEI is the family engagement piece, and it's been trial and error. We have tried family engagement with schools and for schools on their site. We have tried it at the university and making it a Worcester-wide event where we would invite all middle school parents or elementary school parents or high school parents to come and learn about a particular skill set or knowledge that we felt was key for them to be able to help their kids. And we tried home. And none of them are perfect, and none of them quite got us where we wanted to go. More recently, what's really shown us a big spike in improvement is we looked at a model in California, which is the Institute for Quality Ed, and Worcester's the first site in Massachusetts to actually run this and buy the license. And what it is an institute where the parents come in and they're taught by community leaders and Worcester school officials and staff about engagement and about the different sets of knowledge that they need to know to help their children move to move ahead academically. It's 9 weeks long, and right now we're in a middle school where we're going to graduate 200 parents. That's the first time since I've been doing this in a long time where I've been able to say 200 from one school have completed this and have plans on how they're going to be working with schools, and the schools are working with them. I find that it's taken us about 8 years to figure out that what was needed was a comprehensive school-wide approach that involved schools, community, and family.
For us in Brockton, we struggled for many years with students coming to us overaged and undercredited. It was a huge issue for us. We tried having those students enrolled in our traditional high school, which was a model that was not working for us. We'd lose those students. They weren't able to progress, and we found that we didn't have the appropriate structures in place to help support them. So over the years, multiple things that we did, we created a series of pathways for these students and other students as well that don't do well with the traditional high school setting. We created what's called, now called the Edison Academy, which we had great help from Desi with regards to the creation of that school. It's basically a school specifically designed for the non-traditional student with a focus in mind for those overaged and undercredited students. It actually is structured differently as well, so that it operates from 2:30 in the afternoon to 8:30 in the evening. Non-traditional times. So again, the students that do need to work, they're able to, have some working hours around the school hours. They're also able to gain credit for their work experience, and they have multiple methods for them to be able to get credit bearing courses done. So that's been a huge relief for us. And one of the major things too is these students, it's a non-fee-based program. Originally, one of the things that we had started implementing was a fee-based program for the students that were that needed those extra supports because we couldn't receive Chapter 70 funding. But again, through the help of Desi, we were able to create the Edison Academy, get that Chapter 70 money, so those students now have access to a free education. We also have the Pathway program itself, which is specifically designed so that a student can gain credits through multiple venues within the district. They can take a class in the traditional high school. They can take a class at our Pathway Center, an online class possibly. They can take a class at Massasoit Community College. So we can take credits from a variety of areas that they're getting their academic supports done and added towards their achievement of their graduation. We also have the Champion School in our district, which is, it's somewhat more of a competency-based program, and then we also have the Frederick Douglass program, which again is a non-traditional school. So we've created or crafted a wide variety of different educational avenues for students to be able to pursue in helping them gain their proficiencies.
Yeah, I think the question was, nothing is perfect, basically, right? Yeah, I think we struggle. In with the support of parents, and in the ways that sometimes we celebrate. Like, for example, we recently did a debate celebration where all debaters from our high school come together and celebrate their achievement of the season. By the way, we got the first place on the City of Boston. That was an amazing achievement. And everybody were happy. Everybody was like, oh my God, we did this, guys, and we couldn't believe that what was happening. But then we were preparing everything that let's say that like the auditorium where we did the celebration, it was set up like amazing, it was beautiful. But then turns out that like less than 25 of the parent they just didn't have the opportunity to be there. And I'm not saying because they didn't care about it, but I will say because they are working and they are working hard. And sometimes they don't want to, excuse me, they don't want to stop getting that income, that money that came from that work to the house because of that event. Sometimes they realize that, oh, I will lose like maybe $100 if I just go and spend like 3 hours with my kids in the school. And so they evaluate the situation, and I think that is the struggle that we have right now, because we don't have the support of the parent. And I understand that because sometimes they are working, as I said, but it will be so helpful if they they engage more with the student, because when we feel that someone is supporting us, we feel like empowered. We feel that we can do this, we can do anything. And if that continues like that, if the parents realize that, oh, this is important, and I know money is important, but my child is more important than that. So that would be, for us as students, we're gonna be happy to have the support of the parent, the support of the teacher, surrounding everybody, surrounding of support. That is the meaning of success. That is the meaning of exit of the life. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
I think Ivan said it perfectly. Nothing's perfect as far as we try as teachers, and we want it to be perfect. We learn as we go. When I taught in middle school, I taught in a two-way bilingual program, and students came from a school where the whole school is a two-way bilingual program to being a strand of the middle school. And, we would have parent-teacher conferences, and the teachers say, I want your child to be more involved in the school, your child should be well-rounded, which, I'd have to explain what that meant, because the parents are like, well-rounded? Like, what are you talking about? And, the parents sometimes were like, well, how's my child going to get home? There was a lot of things that they were concerned about. Who's going to be watching my child after school? Exactly what are they doing after school? So we found, we created an affinity group called Latinas en Acción for, specifically for girls, which is the group I worked with. It was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade girls, and we met with each group individually, each grade level individually. And part of our work was to explain, to meet with the parents, give them a place, let them know, give them a contact, a face, somebody they know that they can contact in the building if they ever have any questions. We also introduce the students to the after-school curricular activities, because there seemed to be an assumption that students just knew that there was soccer after school, or there was baseball, there was an art club, and people don't just know. You have to tell them, and you have to explain it to them. So through that, we were able to do a lot of community service, really expose the students to the community, and it's still going on now. I left the middle school, and this team's still strong. Students are visiting local colleges, and the families are very involved with the groups. So I think it started off from wanting to help the students, not knowing how to help the students, and also trying to teach the teachers how to communicate with the families, and to now it's a group that's really a strong part of that school community. I think the other thing that I've noticed is a lot of times when we're telling families, your child needs to learn English, and sometimes what families are hearing is, well, I better stop speaking my native language at home then, because if my child needs to learn English, I better speak to my child in English. So then I find, pulling the parent aside, I said, well, no, I explained to them the benefits of the child having to learn both languages. And currently, Framingham is one of the pilot schools for the sale of biliteracy. And that's really brought a lot of value to the parents to understand, like, okay, so my children are they're learning my language and they're learning English, and they're not losing part of their culture, because part of the concern was the parents were no longer able to communicate with their children, because the children now, spoke maybe, I can speak from my family's experience, Spanglish, where you speak a little bit of English, a little bit of Spanish, you understand everything, your parents get, try to do the same thing with you, and at the end, you really, you learn that you don't have the same language anymore. So with the seal of biliteracy, we had a meeting for the parents, and we explained to the parents, what the seal was, which is awarded to students whose first language is in English, or students who are learning, second languages in the World Language Program. We explained that, it's for students who are reading and writing and speaking in more than one language. We explained the benefits of it and the job opportunities that would be open to students because they speak more than one language, and how that translates financially, like how much more money students can make because they speak more than one language, and the asset this is and the value, and how they're at home they've taught their children this value and asset, and at school how we can support it, which is also part of the reasons that we have a World Language Program in the elementary school. And so at the pilot program now, we're working on it with the students, and our 5th graders are in the pathway to biliteracy. We told them they're, seal of biliteracy semifinalists.
That's awesome. I think you brought a really interesting point. I think, I would say we try to do our best. Well, the teacher and the staff try to do the best. In my school, we have this program that is called ELA, that we do this at the end of the day. Every day, there is a special class at the end of the school where the student can go and, to do fun stuff like art class, like debate, like running club and things like that. But I was kind of paying attention. Why did some students, they just decide just to leave and do not go to that class? And I was wondering why. And one like, I guess 1 week ago, I was like, I'm gonna see why, because I'm so curious. And I was standing in the main door, and I was like watching everybody to leaving, and all of a sudden I just asked to one of my friends, and I said, where do you live, man? Do you know that we have this class right now, running club, and we must go? And he like, I know, buddy, but I gotta work today, right? I gotta work today. And like 95% of the students that I asked, the main problem was work. And so we are doing the best we can, but the problem is that they have to, in the home, there is an economic situation where everybody must support. And so they have no options. They have no option to go and just, go to work after school. And I think they wanted to be there because he told me that I wanted to go, but I cannot because I gotta work. And I think we must do something about it.
Thank you for that, because I think it also talks about, you've all talked about sort of the structural issues that are in place, and that if, as a teacher, if you're attentive to that, you can be more understanding, but you also need a school structure that's responsive to that, and hopefully other structures around. So I appreciate that. I think we have a question from the audience.
Hi, can you hear me? Oh, there we go. Jake Murray, I'm at the Boston University School of Education. I want to ask you about college access and success and how you're seeing that challenge. And I know, Ms. Marion, you're at Worcester State University or Worcester State. Yvonne, your experience as a high school student, but it's a growing area that a lot of schools are getting services around college access and success. There's more and more programs. Is it meeting the needs of first language, non-English students? And if it isn't, what has to happen or change?
While I think, and again, I want to be careful here, because as the study really looked at, there are many classes of FLNE students, which I found really interesting about this research, and I'm going to take back to the field with me, because it gives us an anatomy to look at in terms of how we structure the services that we do. So with that said, I think for some of the classes, the existing college access models are appropriate, but I would say for 3 or more, they're not. In that if you're an English language learner, the pathway you must take to get to college is not the same as your typical student. And too many college access initiatives are one model fits all, much like many of our schools, because of question 2 and other reasons, are very limited into how they can teach EL students. So the same kind of thing can be happening in the higher ed world. And so, for instance, it's very hard to find a model that will show a family what a TOEFL is. Who needs to take it? Do all immigrant students do? No. Which ones? Who? Whether if you go to a 2-year school and then transfer to a 4-year school, is the TOEFL necessary? There's all these important technical questions which have a big effect on whether students will graduate from college at a reasonable rate. What I find appalling, and he's going to get my blood going, is when students go to a 2-year school and begin and they enter as ESL students. They're paying full cost as they're learning non-credit English. And how many of them then transfer from the non-credit English and into 4 credit and continue on their way? These are things we need to think about and find alternative low-cost ways to get them where they need to be before the clock starts ticking and before they spend a grant that they're only going to get once in their life. So those are the things that really affect the outcomes that students have, and I don't think we've done enough in Massachusetts to really segment out what are the different kinds of roadblocks and information that students need to have. Alternatively, I don't think we do enough to show where things are really working well that students aren't taking advantage of. We make sure that our students that speak Spanish take a CLEP. A CLEP is a college-level equivalency test that you can take that depending on how you score, can automatically give you college credit towards Spanish. So that takes your assets and shows you it puts a value on it, and students can save money because they don't have to take those courses, and it also shows that they can succeed in college. It sends that message, oh, I mastered this, I know this, I can master other things. So there are other kinds of ways that we can look at whether college access initiatives are looking at the whole spectrum, the roadblocks, and what could really help that we're not using enough.
I think she said everything that I was about to say. And I think that for English language learning, it is not the same, the traditional way, as you said. And I will say one of the points that is that is so different, it's not the same, is when I'm gonna be applying to college. I don't have experience yet, but I will have. But my friend said that one of the main reasons why he was like, should I go to college or should I just go to work, was that when the exams come, all the, like, let's say MCAS, SATs, and exams like that, it's not the same. It's not fair for an English language learner that he just spent 2 years in America and he's gonna take SAT next day, or let's say next month. How come that student gonna score a higher score if he just spent 2 years in America? So, and that is like kind of unfair, because other students can get higher score. And we're not saying that a student is not smart, but we are saying that the proficient in English might be the problem of getting a higher score. And I think when we looked at and we say, oh, this is my score, and I want to apply to, let's say, X college, I want to apply to X university, and the university is going to see the score, it's not because the student is not smart, but it's because the proficient in English and the score that reveals, oh, no, we're not going to accept this student. And sometimes those opportunities are denied to the students that are really trying to learn. And I think that's not fair. And as she said, it's not the same the traditional way. We're never going to be the same. We never going to compare the progress of a native English speaker with a English language learner. The results not going to be the same. But as we see, this might be the main problem. The main problems of some students, they just decide to just do not go to college because their score on SAT is kind of scary. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And Laura, I don't know if you have any reflections just based on, I know you deal with a variety of populations and sort of college-going cultures.
Sure. It's definitely a challenge for us, and of course for some of our student populations, one of the major challenge is their immigration status, as far as entrance into college. So that's a huge huge barrier for for some of our students and families. What we're trying to do aside from the immigration status issue, what we're trying to do is we're working with our partner of Massasoit Community College, and they've been coming in and doing AccuPlacer testing early on, so that we can gain a sense of where student strengths are and where maybe their areas of need are, and then starting to design some coursework while they're still in high school, so to help alleviate from the need of taking the developmental courses once they leave high school. And we're really working with them on curriculum alignment so that our definition at the high school of proficiency matches their definition of proficiency for when students do leave us and enter into college. The other thing that we're working on currently, and we're in infancy stages on this, but we think it's going to make a huge difference as well, is we're partnering again with MCC, Massasoit Community College, and Bridgewater State University. And what we're working on is to have a dual admissions. So if a student gets admitted to MCC, which is usually for a lot of our FLNE students, that's usually their first stop that they're going to go for further education. that we're also getting them admitted to Bridgewater State University, which is the four-year school. So they'll spend some time on campus at MCC and some time on campus at BSU, so that when they do finish their associate's degree, they're automatically already enrolled, already receiving credit at Bridgewater State University, so that transition is much easier for them to then be able to get their four-year degree. Infancy stages, but...
Question?
I was going to comment on the post-secondary piece that's really important for people to keep in mind. New England Association also accredits every university in San Juan and in Puerto Rico, which a lot of them are high-end universities. Endicott has taken advantage of that and actually offers for Spanish speakers. What they need to be able to do to graduate to meet the New England Association is at the end of the degree be able to be proficient in English. There is no reality. I mean, higher ed, we think about this, and how are you going to change your mindset? People come from Puerto Rico here to do graduates and doctorates. A number of us are extremely proficient in language, but we weren't like that. We were all Spanish speakers. If we could develop, if BU could do this, if other programs could do this, where you have a transitional academic program and you build that the student has the academic rigor in their native language. So instead of looking at the Accuplacer and everything else, give them the College Board. If they can show that they have the fluency in their native language to understand this, and you're giving an academic program, and you're going to transition them into an English program, you will have no accreditation issues with New England states. So the question is, how flexible are we about meeting the needs of the population? The other question I would say is, what are we doing for DACA, and how are we training these students that they have access to DACA to be able to access higher ed, regardless of which part of the country?
Those are important comments, so thank you for talking about the structures that exist and that need to be talked about. We have a question there, but then Reggie, over to you.
There it is. Hi, my name is Zeta, and I'm actually here from Bunker Hill Community College. And everything you clearly just spoke about as far as dual enrollment, that's already happening at our institution. We are able to serve DACA students. We're able to serve undocumented students. And we are definitely targeting the non-credit developmental courses. And when students test the Accuplacer, or there's something that we can't get away from, we are revamping and looking into other options. But currently, these students are testing to developmental courses. If they take advantage of the dual enrollment or the early college, they can take care of some of these courses, because as we know, when they go to college and they take the ESL classes, non-credit, and they're tapping into their financial aid or sometimes paying out of pocket for classes that really are non-credited. So definitely we're making ways that way. Thank you.
I think that's a great comment. That's an amazing comment. And I think that everything is connected. If we open these opportunities to our students, like to access to the higher education, like college and university and things like that. In the beginning, as the quote right there that is in front of me, it's just an amazing quote. They say, "I came here to learn." We came here to learn. I came here to learn, and I would like to learn more after high school, because that's the main reason why I'm here, right? And so if we open those opportunities to the student, they're gonna learn. And when they're gonna learn, they're gonna be the leaders of our future. And that's what we want, right? That's what the society wants. And I think that if we help them, the student, to get into high school and then getting through college, we are doing the right thing for the society and the community.
Well said. My name is Reggie Jean. I work with the Upward Bound program here at Boston University. So we're a college prep program that works with Boston Public School students. And so what we've heard in the last 2 minutes is issues regarding a living wage, because if families can have jobs that have a living wage to them, then there's less need for children to work. And then, so by children having to work, they miss out on opportunities. So that's at the state and federal level. I heard about SAT optional schools, and so the increase of that would open access to other students, and the immigration status, playing a role in college entry and paying for college. And I mentioned those because, just to give kudos to the Center for Promise and the work that you're doing, because by making these reports, it's a way to share with other stakeholders who are not in this room some of the issues that are barriers to student success. So I also have a question. So one of the things that we found at Upward Bound, during the last 5-6 years is the role that older students who are FLNE students are playing with younger students who are new to our program, and how they're helping them, learn about tips about, how to approach your schoolwork. You don't have to read all that. Just scan it, look for these buzzwords, and then you can learn it. And, shortcuts that they're helping them learn. And then also talking to them about sacrifice. Of, you may not be able to do this, fun thing now, but if you put the work behind it, it's going to pay off in the long run. And so when adults talk that language, students don't always listen, right? But when there's an older student who's similar background, or maybe the same obstacles they had, they listen to it, a little differently. So we're trying to figure out ways how to sort of institutionalize that, and with mentorship programming. But I was interested to see what are some ways that you found, utilizing those older students that have been through it, and helping the younger students through.
That's a really good question. One of the things that really works for us, and it's the near peer kind of model that I think you're talking about, is we take Worcester State and Quincy students and other local university students that are from Worcester or urban Massachusetts with immigrant experiences, who need to be paid so they can finish their university, and we pay them and train them to work in the Worcester schools as instructional aides in the classroom. It's a very nice kind of model because you're helping the students to get through higher ed as they're engaging with young people as near peers. And we can't get enough of them because of the schools eat them up, because they use them to help communicate with parents in languages that make sense, and in after school, and as mentors. So we have the assets in our urban areas. We don't need to import, additional, which I think was your point. It's just a question of restructuring what we do in ways that are efficient. So you're helping college students learn and succeed, and you're helping K through 12. And I would urge you to look at models like that. And I will also say, although I'm at Worcester State, all of our applied work, this work, is through grants. So there's a high hurdle, but it's so, you can make a case for it that's compelling. And I will tell you that as this percentage of students will grow, urban areas are having a hard time figuring this out in scale, and are going to be coming more and more to universities and other large educational institutions to help them figure this out. And I think we need to be ready.
Anybody else want to chime in on that one?
Just real briefly, we're piloting, again with MCC and Bridgewater State University, an initiative entitled 100 Mails to College, and it's specifically we're targeting English language learners, FLNEs, young males, that they would be the first in their family to go to college. But basically, we're providing them with wraparound supports while they're in high school, and exposure to college experiences on campuses. But at the same time, we are pairing them with a mentor who is similar to their background, who is at the institutes of higher ed. So there's that one-on-one relationship that's going to be developed, that the student who is FLNE and who is now in college will be working with that younger student and sharing with that young man the experiences that he went through in order to get where he is now.
I have more to share about a little bit about the near peer and the experience in my school. So we've collaborated with the Center for College and Career Readiness at Framingham State University. And the near peers came to meet with the fifth graders to let them know, just talk to them about college and see if they have any questions. And the parents asked, can we go visit the university campus? So we did. We took a Saturday field trip, and Framingham State provided a bus, and we all went to the college campus. And the near peers gave the students a tour of the building, of the campus. And the questions the students were asking, and questions they never have asked me or any of their teachers, is like, well, how many classes do you have to take? And like, what do you need to get into college? And you see fifth graders taking notes down because there's a near peer, it seems like 18 to 24-year-olds giving them the information, all of a sudden became more valuable than a teacher or a parent. But then the parents were also interested, and they've developed relationships with the near peers. So the parents themselves can go to college. So the near peer experience, it was last spring we went on the field trip, and then we've had 2 professional workshops for families on college and career readiness, and parents have asked to go back, specifically with the near peers.
Thank you for all this. And we could go on, I know, for all morning. I see we're going to run up against time constraints. And so what I'd love to do is invite everybody just to really thank our amazing panel for the wisdom. I'm sure you could probably corral a few of them before they get out the door with all of your additional questions. But really just, really humbled by the insights they provide. I'd like to next just invite up Niall Fuentes from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education for a last few words. I just want to say in gratitude to Niall and to Kate Sandell, who's also here from the state, who without their partnership and without their help and constant assistance, this report never would have happened, and the amazing work that they do every day to really support the students we're talking about. So thank you, Niall.
All right, so you were supposed to have the commissioner today. I'm not the commissioner, nor will I ever be, but he does send his regards on, and I think this is a big part of the work we do, is trying to close these opportunity gaps and these educational gaps that we have, and this is a big one that we have around graduation rates that we've really been working on. So first of all, my name is Niall Fuentes. I'm from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, College or Career Readiness Coordinator. I've been known to talk fast. There's no translator, right? So I can kind of keep it. Okay. So my colleague Lisa suggested to me, just repeat what Dean Coleman said and Mr. Gompertz, and I was like, and then you'll be fine. And I said, well, I can't do that. So I got that part's done. Then Dr. Varga came in and hit all the data pieces, and I'm like, wow, that's my second skill. So all I really got left is folksiness and stories that go nowhere. So I think part of what the state is trying to do around this issue and really closing this gap, particularly for FLNE students, is to really create conditions for schools, districts, communities, and families to support learners. None of us ever go and work independently with individual students. We are trying to help, and some people would argue we're not, but trying to help schools to really serve their kids well. So as part of this, we really started to look at our grad rates and really started to look at our data and really started to see that of our 5,523 dropouts, I usually start off every presentation about talking about these 5,523 dropouts across the Commonwealth. Out of our 290,000 plus high school students, there's 5,000 souls that go out there with no credential from high school, kind of out in the wind, costing, if you talk to the economists, costing hundreds of thousands of dollars a piece, and not being successful in their lives, because we know that the outcomes for students without high school diplomas are very poor. So when we were trying to put this together and really look at these subgroups, Jenny Curtin, my colleague over there who abandoned us and went to work for Barr Foundation, and I were really trying to think of how we can start to focus on some of these populations. Lisa Harney, my other colleague over here, really is in charge of what's called our Dropout Prevention and Re-Engagement Network. And I think some of you might have been involved in this network. And this is the whole idea, is that we convene people. We get smart people together in schools, sometimes bring people like Dr. Zaff to come in and kind of school us on some cool things that are happening around the country, but to really get together and talk about the issues and try to figure out what's going on. We cannot offer them large sums of money. We had a substantial federal grant through MassGrad, through High School Graduation Initiative, that helped to serve some of these students, but we really, after that ran out, we really needed to figure out, like, what are we going to do? So at one point, Jenny and I mostly sat down and figured out, like, okay, let's focus on one of these areas. We saw this opportunity for America's Promise. And it's a relatively small dollar opportunity, but we realized it was an opportunity for us to convene really smart people again around a specific issue. And this specific issue was first language, not English kids. We started out with the ELL, saying this is a group that has, of our 5,523 dropouts, almost 1,100 of them are English language learners. So we're talking about a quarter of our dropouts are English language learners in a population that's about a little over 6% of the high school student population. Humongous issue. As we really started to think this out, though, we started to think about this, we often think about ELLs as a monolith, and we started thinking about all these groups that go in ELL, and I think Dr. Varga really started to break these down, that in this population, we have lots of different kids. So how do we really think about it? And then we started thinking about first language, not English. So you think about populations of students who are not ELL, meaning they have English language proficiency, but that doesn't mean their mom and dad do. That doesn't mean their family do. They have the same issues as first-generation college goers, perhaps, that ELL kids do as well. So that became a huge piece for us. I think our working philosophy was that we need to have high expectations for all kids, right? We need to engage students in their own success, right? Their butts are in this more than anybody. You're still going to get a paycheck next week. You're still going to get a paycheck. These kids, if they don't get their education, they have nothing. So engaging them in their own success and really meeting them where they are. And this, I think, this is the piece that has always been missing. It's like we can have high expectations, but we need to figure out where they are, the hermeneutical conversation of this, I guess, to really get them moving forward and being successful. And kind of working state philosophy is, we're going to, raise the tide to lift all these boats. But some of these boats are a little less seaworthy. They're a little, here's my folksy story. This is all I got. So we really want to think about how we can help these individual students, these groups of students, to be successful. With this, in this FLNE population, we have Puerto Ricans who might have been here for 4 generations, still as first language, not English students. We have kids who've been here 5 minutes. We have kids who have escaped El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, who are escaping war, who either came across the border, overstayed a visa, whatever, however they got here. Kids that were resettled as refugees. So it's a huge number of students with different needs, with different assets that they bring to the conversation, and levels of citizenship or legality. So part of this whole conversation also began to be, I think, a lot of talking to Brockton. If you heard your colleague Kelly Jones really talk about the issues of undocumented citizens, undocumented students, and how we serve them, and figuring out kind of across this whole context. So what we did with the America's Promise Initiative, ESE is really focused on doing teacher PD through for ELL students. My colleague Melanie is here in the back, and she could talk to that, and really getting good teachers. I mean, the commissioner is really high on this. You need good teachers in front of classrooms with high quality curriculum in order to be successful. We started thinking about what are the other parts that go into this success. How do we get these 10 districts together to really convene on solutions? We gave them super small amounts of money. I think in Boston it'd probably be, and no offense, it's a large amount, it's a big check. But when we spread it across places like Boston, Worcester, I mean, it's basically postage to them. But it gives them the excuse, right? It gives them permission to come and meet with their peers and really do some learning. We established a leadership council for the state. We brought people in. We brought Mary Jo in from LEI, Helen in from Matsall. We brought some folks in. Where else did we get folks in? All over the place. Mass Alliance for Teen Pregnancy, Rennie Center, Mass Inc. Some people that do some really high-level policy work to kind of help inform what direction we're moving in. We really discovered that we wanted to really talk about things like we're talking about these new ELLs, these overage students, a lot of them from Central America, a huge population to think about and work on, refugees and new immigrants. We also started thinking, and this comes a lot from what Helen is talking about. I encourage you to look at our materials around biliteracy. What is an asset-based approach to what we're going to do for kids? We always talk about, oh, they don't know English, they can't do that, but they do bring a lot of, again, there's a lot of controversy on this grit thing. Living through coming here from somewhere else is a very important experience in anyone's life. I think for all of us, we came here, and again, I love this, I came here to learn. I think Yvonne, where is Yvonne? Oh, he's back there. By the way, you look awesome, man, and that tie shirt combination, tight. But I came here to learn, and Yvonne put this very well. All of our families came here thinking that we were going to have an American dream, right? That there's no Russian dream, there's no Chinese dream, there's no, South African dream. You come here for the American dream. And I think a lot of time people think this is suspect, this is trite, but really all these folks that are coming here think that, okay, I'm going to scrub floors, but my kid is going to Harvard. And I think that's our Worcester State, our Framingham State. And, you know, and particularly with the current, and we're, again, getting back to America's Promise, really we started thinking about in this convening, these are strange times. And I don't care what political background you come from, but in my lifetime, and as I start to become old, it's like I don't remember ever things being like this. There were always kind of, you know, like how we thought about immigrants. I mean, there's always people who are like, oh, you know, but, you know, the whole, how it's becoming like contextualized across the whole system and not realizing that, you know, a generation ago, whether, you know, like my father came here on Eastern Airlines or whether you came here on the Mayflower, at some point, most of us came here from a different place. And to understand that, and I think most of the people in our convening, that's just understood, right? We understand that this is, and what do we do best by kids? So we start to look at the assets that kids are bringing. We start to look at the issues around SLIFE. I think we started to do some work with students with limited interrupted formal education and really think about how that policy looked, but also how the implementation looks. If you ever get depressed, and I know Yvonne's here, I don't know where Mr. King went to, but if you ever get depressed and you want to see a great place to be, go to Binka. And I know JC went there with us and the Pearson people, and it's just like, wow, these kids are hungry to learn, you know, and a lot of kids are. But this provides an environment, an ecosystem for students to be successful. It's a great place to be. And it's something we would like to really imitate, if not replicate, across the Commonwealth. Without, you know, we don't have a ton of money, so we have to, you know, it's the power of ideas that we're really working on here. So what else, other nonsense do I have to say? So just real quickly, and I want to give some thanks, and this is the worst part about doing this, is like, because I'm going to miss, I have a lot of friends in this room, and I really want to thank my colleague Lisa Harney, who really heads up most of our grad initiatives. And you know, this is a part of a bigger piece. And if you're interested in our Dropout Prevention Re-Engagement Network and you're a school person, talk to Lisa, become engaged. It's free. You just got to come out to Leominster a couple times a year and see what's going on. It's a great time. We really focus on consultancies and people working together, getting some people with expertise to kind of talk with people and not at them. For Kate Sandell, who really works, I did this the second time I've done it. I've known her for like 15 years. And she really works on our data, on our early warning indicator systems, a lot of stuff, and not just creating crazy spreadsheets and analysis, but really stuff that is understandable to people and allow them to make really critical decisions about what they're going to do with their students. Melanie, certainly from our OLA office, Mary Jo and Helen, Mary Jo from LEI, who you met, and Helen Solorzano from That's All, who are part of our leadership team that help provide some of the context of the work that we're doing. All of our districts and CVO partners, we can't do this. Again, we're the state. We just kind of, you know, sit here and say, hey, you guys should do this, think about this. But the people who are doing actual work are in the community organizations, they're in our schools, and I think we've worked hard to really develop a good relationship with those folks and how we try to work together. And certainly to the America's Promise Initiative, you gave us a good framework, a good excuse to both get our leadership team together and convene these 10 districts to do some work, you know, because now like Lori has an excuse that she gets to come to Marlboro and really talk about these issues. And I think that importance, I can't say that enough. Talking about things and understanding things with other people who are looking at the same critical issues you are, or they are with, you know, outside of the context, you know, you're talking to someone else who has no idea about what it is to work with an English language learner. Now you're working with someone who understands SLIFE, who understands refugees, who understands, you know, temporary protected status of students and the level, you know, things that most teachers might not be know that much about. So I really want to thank that. And again, of course, to Pearson for really writing the check, and to JC for really helping out to kind of help with our messaging around what this looks like. So that is my closing remarks. And again, this is a great report. Really appreciate it. Hope it gets read far and wide. And I thank you for the time.